Alright, so now for the JavaScript. So the first thing that we're going to be doing with the JavaScript is I want to set up some constants, declare the variables I'm going to be using, and set up one helper function that I'm going to be using. And all of this is just going to make it easier for me to do the rest of the code, right? Rather than having to repeat myself a lot. So the first one is I want to set up the window constant. So I want to, rather than calling window dot inner width every time, I want to call inner width and inner height by themselves. So I'm declaring them as constants. The next one is the math, and this is going to be really useful because I'm going to be using this a lot, I think. Is constant math. So I have a couple of things. So the first one is the random function, math.random is now random, math.absolute, math.floor, math.cosine, math.sine, and finally math.pi. So 3.14, I don't know the rest. And we go into let. The next one is I'm going to be declaring some variables that I'm going to be using. So win height for the dynamic height, setting the height of the canvas dynamically. Then we have CTX for drawing on the canvas, particles, which is the array that holds the particle objects, particle number of particles. I have particle radius. Oh, don't want a capital P there. Particle radius, particle speed, and particle life. I think that's good getting started. I may need to add something here, but this should be good. And the last one that I want to do is I'm going to write my own helper function of the random. So rather than just using math.random and then multiplying it by the range that I want or anything, I'm just going to put it all in this function here. So the first thing is, the first parameter is going to be the minimum value. The next parameter is going to be max with a default of 0, so it's not required to be passed. Then, and the last one is going to be a negative, which is going to be set to false at default. The negative is going to allow me to choose a positive or a negative range when I call the function, for it to return a positive or negative range. And it's going to return a float, if I'm not mistaken. JavaScript doesn't really do that, but I'm going to return it's going to be whatever is given back from the random. I'm not going to return it as a whole number. It's whatever I get is whatever I get. The next step is, let's write it out. So the first one is check the condition. So if the max, right, if max is equal to 0, or I could just do negative, right? Like a falsy value, because 0 is a false value. So if max is that, then we are going to set the max is equal to the min, and the min is equal to 0. The next thing we're going to check is if negative is set to true. If negative is set to true, then we got to address it. So we're going to go let value, the value that's returned is equal to random. Now remember, I'm not calling math.random because I already declared random as a constant, so I'm calling random. And if the negative value is set to true, then I want to get the values back for both negative and positive, like a negative or positive value should be returned. And so what we do is we go random minus 0.5. Now that's the key to this. That's the base. So random returns 0 to 1, a pseudo random number between the range of 0 and 1. Now if we subtract 0.5 from that, we effectively get a pseudo random number returned between the range of negative 0.5 and 0.5. Well, we want negative 1 and 1 realistically. And so what we just do is we just multiply that by 2. Now we get an effective random number between the range of negative 1 and 1. And finally, we are going to multiply it by the range that we have set. So max minus min. So if we pass a minimum value of 10 and a maximum value of 20, we are going to effectively have a range of 10 values. And so we want the random number that we get to be within the range of 10 and 20. So we're going to now set it up that we get a random value that's between the range of negative 10 and 10. This is what we're effectively at right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to return based on what the value is. So we're going to use a ternary operator here. Hope this is making sense. So we're going to go and say if the value is greater than or equal to 0, and we're going to start the ternary operator. If the value is greater than or equal to 0, then we want to return the value plus the min. And if that's not the case, if the value is less than 0, then we want to return the value minus the min. Now, let's break this down. If, let's say, we get a value, random minus 0.5, we effectively get, let's say we get 0.3. And we multiply by 2, we get 0.6. And then we multiply it by the range, which is max minus min. So 20 minus 10 is 10. So 0.6 multiplied by 10, you get a value of 6. That's positive. So we go 6 plus the minimum value, which is 10. So we get 16. That's what's getting returned. If we say we ended up with negative 0.1, we get negative 0.2 multiplied by 10 is 2. And then negative 0.2 multiplied by 10 is negative 2, and because the value is less than 0, we get negative 2 minus 10, and we effectively get a value of negative 12. So we get either, so now we're working in the range. If we call the rand function with 10 as the minimum and 20 as the maximum, and set the negative values parameter to true, we can get a random value of negative 10 to negative 20, or 10 to 20. So we get within two separate ranges. I hope that makes sense. And then finally, the last one is the condition is that if the negative value is not set to true, then we want to return a random number between the range that is given. So max minus min plus the minimum value. And that's it. That's our helper function rand. I use it a lot in this in generating these particles. You could change it up, but I like this because it uses the math.random, but it saves me from having to do the multiplications to get it within the effective range that I want. Awesome. Now let's outline the rest of the functions that we have.